Harvard has said no. You just have to trust us. You have to accept our pinky promise. You understand the average American would ask us what planet we just parachuted in from, right?
What we have found
I'm going to run out of time.
Oh,
you can make it fast.
Take your time back in.
Madam Secretary, I want to welcome, by the way, I want to ask you about the TRIO program that has been mentioned, and its sister program, Gear Up. We spend $1.858 billion a year on TRIO.
Yes.
That's $1,580 million a year. Is my math right?
I think that's right, sir.
And how long have we been spending $1,580 million a year on this program?
I'm not sure of the total length of time of the program.
More than 10 years?
Yes.
So that's over $1 trillion we've spent on this program. And in this program, this $1 trillion we've spent, we give this money, as I appreciate it, to colleges and universities to encourage poor kids to go to college. Is that right?
To provide some of those kids who have not yet been exposed to what it takes to get ready to go to college.
Okay. To encourage poor kids to go to college, right?
Yes.
Okay. And given that we've spent $1 trillion, how many poor kids who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college have gone to college and graduated?
A significant number, I would imagine.
How many?
I don't know exactly.
Isn't that a question we should ask?
I think so, and I'd be happy to get back to you with that answer. You know, the other thing about the...
But wait, Madam Secretary, I'm not fussing at you. Do we have that number?
I don't think so.
I'm looking, we don't have it.
I don't think so, because there is
Well, if we were... So we've spent $1 trillion, and we've given this money to universities, and they're supposed to encourage poor kids to go to college. But we don't know how many poor kids went to college who otherwise wouldn't have gone to college and graduated, right?
Correct.
Well, what do your audits show?
Well, that's the issue, and I mentioned it when I was...
Are you able to audit?
We're not. We're not able to audit, and there are constraints against the TRIO program for its accountability. The other issue with...
Well, but I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't have much time. So we spent $1 trillion. We gave it to the colleges. We said encourage poor kids to go to college. We don't know how many kids went to college because you don't have the authority to audit. How do you know these universities are not just using the money to operate instead of encouraging poor kids to go to college?
I'm not sure.
You don't know how?
No.
Because you can't audit.
Correct.
You understand hope is not a strategy.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if you told the average American, we just spent $1 trillion of your money, and we gave it to colleges and universities, and we said encourage poor kids to go to college, but we don't know how many kids went to college who otherwise wouldn't have gone and who graduated. You understand the average American would ask us what planet we just parachuted in from, right?
That's right. You know, Senator, if I may, there's one other issue on the TRIO program. What we have found
I'm going to run
is...
out of time.
Oh,
You can make
you're
it fast.
Take your time back then.
Let me ask you a question about our skirmish with Harvard. And I don't want to get into the merits. President Trump has said that Harvard is violating federal law and he's withholding their money. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
we've never violated federal law, but if we did, we give you a pinky promise that we won't do it again. Is that right?
Yes.
And then President Trump said, okay. No offense, but, you know, I just want to be sure. So why doesn't Harvard, I will give Harvard the authority to appoint a monitor, pick whomever they want. The federal government has the right to veto the pick. So if they pick their brother-in-law, that wouldn't be fair. And Harvard said, no, you just have to trust us. You have to accept our pinky promise. Is that basically what's going on?
Well, and not only that, but Harvard did respond to our request for negotiations with a lawsuit.
Well, but
we're in the throes of
we,
litigation.
If Harvard would just agree to a monitor, that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Might serve part of it. The provost is what vice provost that we've asked that would come on to be one of the monitors on that situation.
I'm way over. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Senator Reid.
Well, thanks very much. Welcome, Madam Secretary. And I'm not a great mathematician, but I think you were talking about $1 trillion. I believe 1.5 billion times 10 is $15 billion. That's a little bit off from $1 trillion. But
I think the budget cut's $1.2 billion for TRIO.
well, 1.2, that would be $12 billion, not $1 trillion.
Okay.
Fine. Why aren't you recommending an audit for the TRIO program if that's what the problem is?
I'm not allowed to audit it.
Oh, legislatively, you could propose that.
We could propose it, which is what I had said at the very beginning. I would look
Why-
forward.
You're not
I would look
proposing
forward.
it. You're not proposing the audit. You're proposing to essentially constrain the program, put it into a block grant, and without any request for audit language, which would come from the United States Senate.
Well, that's exactly what I would request.
Well, why don't
If
you
the
request
program goes
that,
first.
Secretary?
Yes, I would like to do that. If Congress is going to appropriate again money for the TRIO programs, then I would like to work with Congress, and part of that would be auditing.
Well-
we've found that about 92% of the TRIO funds go to the same people all of the time, the same institutions.
That could indeed imply an audit necessary, but it doesn't validate the budgetary approach you're taking. You're taking basically many programs, combining them into from $8 billion total to $2 billion to a block grant. Now, in Washington, the block grant is the slow path to extinction because next year the request will be for probably $8 billion. And 4 or 5 years from now, when the request is still $8 billion, the cost will far exceed that. That's sort of budgeting 101. So you're really out to eliminate these programs, I think, not to make them more efficient.
That's not true. I disagree with that.
Well-
there are some budget cuts, but what we're asking for is a simplified funding measure, which will be a single grant funding to the states for them to use in the best way possible to make sure their education is working better.
No, I think
However, the other side of that, if I may, sir, is that we are reducing the regulatory burden. Do you know that 47 cents of every dollar that goes into a school, teachers spend complying with regulations? So if we can take away that regulatory burden, yes, while there are some cuts in the cost of funding, we still give the opportunity to have more dollars because we're reducing the regulatory
But
burden.
let me understand this. You're very enthusiastic about an audit, but the regulatory burden is so crippling. An audit would impose more requirements on the schools. I just think you're coming and going, and we're not making progress. The cut to these programs is profound, $6 billion. And the states are not going to step up and say, we can do this. I'll tell you why. Because if this budget passed, every state in this country is going to make a difficult decision. Do I save my health care system, or do I save my public education system? Many of them can't do both. And this is will be a profound shock to the education systems around the country. In 1 year, a loss of these funds, and to the students that need it.
Well, what we have found,
Have
sir,
you ever taken public assistance?
have I ever taken public assistance? No, sir.
No? Not at all?
No, sir.
Well, many people do. And they need that support to get ahead. And education is a key mechanism to go ahead. I'm over my, no, I still have some time. To get ahead, and it's remarkable. I think, this all sort of started with the GI Bill, when a generation of Americans got to education who never could get before. And then Senator Pell, my colleague, sort of saw that model and increased it. By the way, you're also decreasing the Pell Grants. You're shrinking educational opportunity in the United States for a whole generation and more, and also shrinking our ability to compete internationally and globally, because I don't think the Chinese will slack off in their investments in education.
Senator, I appreciate your comments. However, we have spent $3 trillion since 1980 on education in our country when this department was set up, and our scores have continued to go down. We are not doing something right. And your numbers are a little bit off on a number. We're going to have it's still a cut, but it's about a $4.5 billion cut, not $8 billion cut.
Well, it's a significant cut. And
to be more responsible.
To be more responsible, your responsibility amounts to just surrendering.
Sorry, sir?
Surrendering. We have this crisis in education and literacy, all these factors. What we're going to do is pull back, let the states do it.
No, we'll spend it more responsibly.
I doubt it very seriously.
Let's hope we do.
Well, hope, as someone said, is not a plan. Thank you.